Yo, what is up, Bitcoiners? It's what day is it today? It's Thursday for me. Sorry, I am all over the place. It has been a wild week. It has been a crazy time for me in my personal life. I'm not going to get too far into it, but yeah, it's exciting. Lots of things are happening. I'm moving and shaking. I'm just out there hustling and making that money. So, but anyways, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I love talking to Bitcoiners who are deeply embedded within the Bitcoin mining industry. We talk about everything from heat reuse, energy procurement, site development, operating and running a Bitcoin mine. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of Bitcoin mining. What does the future of Bitcoin mining look like? Where is it headed? What's going to happen? You know, what are the implications of things like Datum and Stratum V2, and what's the difference between that and Stratum V1? What the hell is Stratum V1? You know, we're gonna talk why is FPPS dying, and we're gonna be talking with somebody who I consider a friend. We met in Nashville. We met after the conference in Nashville, but we met at the airport as we were just waiting for our plane to take off. But he's a really cool guy. You might be familiar with him, General Kenobi. He's been working in the Bitcoin space for a while. So about 3 years in a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company as a Bitcoin mining analyst, which is a job that he kind of created for himself. But he's also one of the organizers of the Barcelona Bitcoin only meetup and European Bitcoiners. So as you can honestly see, or honestly already tell, he's a Bitcoin maxi like myself. Now, whether we're toxic maximalists or just regular maximalists, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we're nice guys, but don't bring up shit coins because we're just going to tear you down. But anyways, he is currently working on Demand Pool, the first SV2 pool, and as a business development manager helping to decentralize the mining space. So we're going to hear a couple of controversial takes, things that I basically pretty much completely agree with. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get into the episode. Before we do get into the episode, I got a couple of things I want to show you. First is this.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, go to that one. Go to that QR code, scan the QR code, join the Mastermind Club. This is a great place for anybody who's a new Bitcoiner, an existing Bitcoiner, a new Bitcoin miner, or an existing Bitcoin miner. If you're looking to build and expand your Bitcoin mining operations, whether you're 3.5 kilowatts, whether you're a 1.5 megawatt mining operation, it doesn't matter. Come join us, come talk, come hang out, and learn how you can build a better foundation for a better Bitcoin mining business. So what else do I have to tell you about? Well, I've been talking about it a little bit. If you've been following me for the last couple of weeks, you're going to know that I've been talking about heat reuse and the hash rate heat punks. I believe that heat reuse is the future of Bitcoin mining. I believe that Bitcoin mining operators are going to have to figure out and integrate heat reuse into the aspect of their businesses in one way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they are going to start to lose. And this is something that the hash rate heat punks are dedicated to. We are innovating, we are building, we are iterating on past projects. And what is happening, one thing that I want to tell you about, is the Undermine Heat Punk Summit. Now, the Undermine Heat Punk Summit is specifically designed to help undermine the status quo. Now, this is a event that is going on in February 21st through the 22nd in Denver at the Space. Now, Tyler Stevens and Cody Harris are the organizers for this event. I did a podcast last week or a couple weeks ago when this comes out, but go check that out. Learn about the Hash Rate Heat Punk Summit. It's a great opportunity for anybody who's curious about Bitcoin mining from a heat reuse aspect. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of people there. There's going to be people like Scott 9000, the developer of the BitAxe project. We've got Cade Peterson from Softworm LLC. We've got some other people, you know, Dane from Hashrate House. We've got Nico Warm Bitcoin, who built his integrated heat immersion system. So there's going to be so many people here, so many companies. I'm pretty sure Heatbit's going to be there and some others as well. It's going to be a great opportunity. Again, that is February 21st through the 22nd. I'm going to share the link so that you can actually go there. And so yeah, go to that link at the bottom of the screen right now. It's in the description of this video as well. Sign up. It's 100,000 sats. It's a great opportunity. Denver's like smack dab in the middle of the country at the northern tip. It's a great opportunity for anybody who's looking to get in. So with that, we are going to bring up Kenobi. General Kenobi, what is up, brother?
Hey, man. How you doing, Trevor? All good.
I'm tired, man. I'm not going to lie. I'm tired. You know, as we were talking a little bit at the beginning, it's like I'm just doing a million things and I'm sleeping like 5 hours a night with the baby, you know, waking up in the morning. So on top of everything that I'm doing, I'm also a present father. So, you know, that's all that needs to be said about it.
Man, hitting it out of the park. But as we were talking at the beginning, right, there's an exchange between health and wealth and all of that, right? And but hey, in these years, you're actually exchanging a bit of health to get a lot of wealth, and that's in your son. So like the happiness you're going to get from that is, you cannot quantify that. You cannot quantify that.
Look, dude, at the end of the day, like someone's got to build it. And if you want to give something to the next generation, you got to build something worth handing off.
Exactly.
You know? And so that's where I'm in the prime in my life. I'm trying to balance. I feel like, you know, before we get into the episode, I just feel like being a man in this day and age and raising a son to be a man is not an easy task. It's not easy being a present father and showing up for the people that depend on you and rely on you. And so, you know, it's an important aspect to life, and it's an important aspect to building those relationships, but it's not an easy task. And so I commend anybody out there who is in the same position as me, trying to build that for the people that we love, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a kid, but I have full intentions of becoming a father one day. And what you say resonates quite hard. Like the fact that nowadays is a tough time to, you know, raise a son or a daughter in this world. So, hey, man, good luck to you. We'll talk more about this off the screen.
Yeah, for sure. This is a mining podcast, man, not
exactly.
a life podcast. Come on.
This is the Build a Mine podcast, not the Build a Son podcast.
Well, I mean, you know, in some aspect, you could think of him as a mine, because like I'm just like, bro, like grow up, start earning some income, take care of your daddy. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, dude, like let's just dive straight in. So what 100%. I like to do on the podcast, I like to give our audience a deeper understanding of who our guest is. So just give a little background and then tell us your Bitcoin origin story, brother.
Yeah, the good part is that my background and my Bitcoin origin story go hand in hand, because the one is the other and the other is the one, so to speak. They're one and the same. So I'll do a quick recap. Currently, I'm 25 years old. I was born in 1999, which from a time-wise perspective, this puts me into college around 2019. So about 6 months before COVID breaks out and fucks up our entire lives, you know, well, COVID or the pandemic. But anyway, that's a different topic. And so I started studying economics in the university here in Barcelona. And through that, I started to learn about, well, I had already gone into finance, into personal finance, into interest rates, into inflation a bit, you know, into saving into the future and all of that, and pensions, for example. The first thing you learn when you start going down the economics and personal finance rabbit hole, especially in Spain, by the way, I'm half Spanish, half German, I'm based out of Barcelona, is that my grandmother, she is receiving a pension. My parents, they will potentially receive a pension. What I'm going to get is a thank you, good luck from my government after paying taxes for my entire life. So I was already thinking about my pension when I was 18, 19, getting into college. And by the time the first summer rolls around, I had already, COVID had already hit. We were already 5-6 months into COVID. And a few friends of mine and my uncle, they come to me separately and they pitch me this like, oh, awesome opportunity, financial opportunity. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was a Ponzi scheme masquerading as crypto arbitrage or some shit like that, returning something like 0.5% a day. Anyway, but I put quite a bit of money back then, bit of money for me, right? 1,000 euros, which nowadays for anyone above 25 with a stable job, 1,000 euros, it's a sum, but it's not much. But for me, it was like half of my money. And I put half of my money in there, 1,000 euros. And even though it was going well at the beginning, I always had this feeling of, oh, something's not right here. Like, this doesn't feel good. I mean, now that I'm in it, I got to start learning about it. So that's what I did. So I started learning. And the more I learned, the more I realized, yeah, this is most likely a scam. So that's with that thing, with that scam, with that Ponzi, I actually got my master's in Ponzinomics, master's in master's in blockchain, master's in fraud. I learned so many things about so many areas in life, especially around finance, that I'm actually happy I put the 1,000 euros in. Of course, looking back, it was 2020. I actually remember having that 0.1 Bitcoin and actually being scared of that. I was scared of like, oh no, I have 0.1 Bitcoin. I told my friend, hey, quickly put it into USDT, which I know, which now looking backwards is like, damn, what a retard. But that's a different topic. So with all of that, by the time the summer of 2021 rolls out, I'm already fully aware that money's gone. Hey, sunk cost. I paid much more for college and learned much less. So, fair deal. And I think it was around May, I actually decided, you know what? I know where my future is going to go. It's going to go into the blockchain space. Yes, at that point, I was still crypto blockchain guy. And I was, yeah, that's the direction. So I call up my dad and I'm like, hey, Dad, I know what I want to do. I want to do blockchain. And there's a funny thing with the universe and with life, where the moment you start putting out certain things, the universe kind of throws it back at you. And 5 days later, my dad calls me like, hey, a friend of a friend of a friend is working at this company that they do crypto mining plus high performance computing. So like computers and GPUs, and they're looking for someone in the investor relations department. That's economics. So investor relations department, check. You're already studying economics, finance, like personal finance, all of that. You follow the markets. Perfect. You're basically in. Perfect fit. High performance computing as well, because during that time, I was also like rebuilding my computer. When I was 15, I built my first computer. And so all of the parts, I don't know how to code, but I'm like a good middle point between like the CEO and a developer, because I understand the hardware. I understand how the pieces kind of fit together. And then I also understand the economics of it, right? So that's kind of my background. So my dad was like, hey, you build your computer, check high performance computing. And also you just told me, hey, you're into crypto and all of that. And I was like, okay, what do you propose? And he's like, summer internship. Hit them up, see if you can get something. And I was like, I kind of didn't want to, classic 20, 21-year-old, doesn't want to listen to his dad, just wants to have a fun summer. But 2-3 weeks later, I'm in a call with the head of investor relations, and he basically tells me, okay, do you know this? Do you know that? Blah, blah, blah. I kind of check all of the things, and he's like, perfect. Can you be here in 3 weeks? And I'm like, yeah, of course I can be there. I have family there, 100%. I didn't really have family there. I had family in another area of the country, but anyway. So I call out my dad and I'm like, hey, I need to be there in 2 weeks. How do we do this? We managed to do that. And that's when I got into this Bitcoin mining company that was also doing Ethereum mining plus AI stuff and whatnot. It was an amalgamation of things. And it was also publicly traded, which made it very interesting. And during those 2 months, I actually wasn't able to do much except learn and see and participate in the company. And one thing that I realized is that, like, the first thing I realized when I got there is, oh my God, I thought I was getting into like a fully Bitcoinized, fully, crypto company. I'm going to learn from the best of the best. But I was like the third person out of a 60-person team to know about Bitcoin and crypto to a decent extent. Looking backwards, what I knew was like very minimal, but like, I knew what swaps were, what AMMs, in what is it, impermanent loss, like how a bit of how cryptography works behind it, where it's applied on the blockchain, right? So I knew a bit. So that tells you what was happening there, right? And it makes sense because if you're looking for a legal team, it's so much easier and cheaper to just get a normal legal team and then teach them a few things about crypto. It's the same about, operations, especially for Bitcoin mining. Hey, just plug in here this cable, right? That's it. You don't need to know anything else. Our guys at headquarters, they'll know networking and all of that, and they'll figure it out, right? So it made sense. But at that point, I was like, okay, I need to at least do something to like improve this company. I need to leave my signature, add my little grain of sand, right?
Yeah.
And that was creating a Bitcoin presentation from the ground up, something like I wanted to like teach them Bitcoin 101. So looking backwards, what I did was kind of hardcore because I basically said, how does Bitcoin work? And I looked up at every single component and I dumbed it down and put it on a presentation, 1.5-hour presentation to explain it to them, which, you're talking to the executive assistant and you're telling them about SHA-256 and how, you go from binary to hexadecimal to decimal, and then how the difficulty, looking backwards, it was a bit crazy, but doing that exercise, getting, having to dumb everything down actually helped me to understand Bitcoin properly. And I still remember the day that I became a Bitcoiner, like fully Bitcoin maximalist, because it's the day that I understood proof of work. So the day that I understood proof of work, like I still remember like reading and, and then reading some lines. And then I was like, oh, wow. And I just, leaned back on my chair. I was like, holy shit, this makes a lot of sense. And like, this means that this and that, right? And, what every Bitcoiner goes through. So then I finished the presentation. I'm already a Bitcoiner at that point. I opened up my Twitter account and all of that. And I enter the Bitcoin space, so to speak. I start selling all of my shit coins and all of that. And I give my presentation by the end of that summer internship. And it was so good that the CEO walked in and he was like, you know what? Like he walked in while I was giving the presentation. He was like, you know what? I think you should stick around. And I was like, you know what? I think I might just do that. So I ended up working for the company for about a year. And they moved me from the investor relations team to business development. But that was just a title. I kind of just had to figure out my own spot in the company. So I was doing market reports. I was helping the finance team. I was helping the controlling team. I was helping, they were also throwing me into any team that had anything to do with like crypto, like anything. They would throw me in there. Like they wanted to do something with helium. I don't know if you remember this IoT crypto coin. They said they had partnerships with Uber and all of these companies. Ended up being a complete fraud. And I was the one who told them, you know what? It sounds like a good idea, but let's wait on it. Let's wait on it. I don't think that's our, that's not our corner of the market. We're already pretty comfortable here. Let's wait on it. And of course, I ended up being right because once you become a Bitcoin maximalist, you tend to be right about a lot of things. But also, I started to become a Bitcoin mining analyst. So doing all of these things, tracking the public markets, the publicly traded markets of Bitcoin mining companies. So I was there when the China Bitcoin mining ban happened in summer of 2021. That's when I was doing my internship. And I left right before the price dipped into the 20s in September 2022, 23. Which one is it? Yeah, 2022. So I rode it all the way up to 70K and then all the way down as, 3 Arrows Capital, all of that stuff. And I was constantly, giving input to the company. So that's how I become who I become. After that, I went back to college. I recently finished my economic studies. And meanwhile, I was doing the Bitcoin meetups here, plus also a European Bitcoiners initiative, which is a different topic. And on my second to last semester, my company called me back up and they were like, hey, we would love for you to join us back and help us out. And I was like, 100%. So I joined them back. I joined back to the company and I left the company as I was graduating because I was looking for greener pastures. And that's how I land at the Man Pool, which is who I'm working for right now. So that's who I am. You can now your listeners know, okay, this guy has actually done something. You know, he's not just some ghost. So yeah, that's
Dude,
kind of me.
talk about a journey of epic proportions and like 1,000 miles, man. Like that was like a ride up, a ride down, a little bit over, a ride up, like to crash.
Yes.
One thing I want to touch on is, you know, there is this I don't know if it's a euphemism or if it's just like a trend or, you know, something that people, you know, us maxis, we have all been through this cost of tuition, if you will. You know, we have paid the price of admission going through the crypto NFT shitcoin scammery, and
Mhm.
you've come out on the other side. And everybody that I hear, that I talk to about this, they go, yeah, I mean, I lost all this money, but everything that I learned through that process of losing that money was worth it. I learned more off of $600 or $1,200 than I learned of spending, you know, $240,000 in college. So it's just, it's funny to me how you have this same similar story. It's like, yeah, I was playing around with these shit coins, these different scam tokens, and I lost all this money, but I learned about Bitcoin and blockchain and how it works, and that kind of sets you up to where you are today. And I think that that's just the price of being a maximalist, because
Skin in the
hey,
game. Skin in the game.
skin in the game. And then look, I try to explain to people, like, when I'm trying to talk to people about Bitcoin, and as a maximalist, you know, we talk to everybody about Bitcoin. If Bitcoin can be brought up in a conversation, we're talking about it. And I try to explain to people, look, like, it's not as hard to understand than you think it is. The first
Yeah,
thing,
I
like,
will disagree with you.
well,
Yes
hold
and
on.
no.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay,
It's
go
not as
ahead. Go ahead.
hard as you think it is, but you have to understand some certain foundational principles first. Like, you have to understand what money is, and you have to understand, like, the foundational principles of the technology itself before you can start to grasp, like, how Bitcoin works and why it's necessary. Yeah, okay, the hashing function, the SHA-256 algorithm, it's not easy to grasp in that aspect. The mathematical function isn't easy, but the technology itself and how it works is pretty straightforward in that sense.
I mean, there's something called, you know, the what is it called? Knowledge curse, I think, the curse of knowledge, where like once you have the knowledge, you look backwards to your journey and you believe it's been easier than what it actually
Okay.
was,
Okay.
right? So, because like it's not that easy, right? Like it actually is a. First of all, you have to like be open-minded. You have to be primed. You have to be
Okay.
ready to accept this new
I hear
reality,
you.
right? Because your entire life they've told you, oh, 2%, and you hear all of the authority figures, all of the economists, all of the, you know, governments, everyone that you trust. Well, no, you do trust them at that point, but you shouldn't. Is telling you, oh no, everything's working fine, everything's working fine. That thing is very dangerous. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Ooh, don't touch it. Be careful. It's very volatile and it doesn't work and it's a Ponzi scheme, right? So you have to first be primed. Like I was already kind of primed because I had already experienced like um how the money in the bank was not really mine, right? It was
Yeah.
just in a loan, so to speak, and the government could access it anytime, and I could lose access to my Bitcoin. I was going to say to my fiat units at any point, right? Because when they're in the bank, they're not yours.
Nope.
So first, you have to be primed, right? And some people, for example, there's a great article by the Croesus guy, Meyer something, but it's the Yuppie elite, I think, and it talks about how all of the people for whom the system has worked for, they're never going to get it. Like my family's German, and some of them have done quite well for themselves, and they just don't get it because the system has worked for them, right? So for them, they're not primed, they're not ready. But then you go talk to someone in Latin America and they're ready, dude. They hear like I had one of my aunts here recently. She's from Ecuador, um, and I told her a bit about Bitcoin, and she was like 100% perfect because people don't know that Ecuador also had its own corralito being where they just awesome, you put it there, where they just close the banks on a Friday and open them up. I don't know, a week two later, and by the time they open them back up, you had a tenth of your money. So,
Mhm.
well, you still had the same nominal amount, but the amount of dollars in there either disappeared or the value in dollars had definitely gone down. So that happened in Ecuador as well. And when I told her how Bitcoin works a bit, she was like, wow, like, yes, I don't need to know how the hash function works, right? I don't need to know how the blockchain, you know, that the previous time hash, no, the previous hash is inside of the block and the next block header, so that then it's hash, so that then, you know, and how the hash functions work. She doesn't need to know that. She just knows, hey, these are the properties. That's it. So, right, in a way, it's like you can go from different angles, but you first need to be primed, and then you need to be open to it, right? That's
yeah. I guess my whole point was maybe it's not easy to understand, but once you understand those primers, once you have those primers, then it's like a cascading effect, and it just becomes easy to understand
it's
why.
Obvious.
You know,
it's obvious.
For me, like I was kind of also already primed to understand Bitcoin, because as a late millennial, you know, I was born in 96, so just right at the end, or late millennial, early Zoomer kind of situation. I'm literally living through this transitionary period. I'm becoming a young adult after 2008. I'm watching, you know, house and property prices just fucking skyrocket. I'm watching wages just drop, and I'm in high school, and I'm like, okay, well, like, what job am I going to get in order to pay all these bills? Like, how much money do I need to live a comfortable life? Like all these things. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me that I have to be like a rocket scientist in order to make $180,000 a year, and that's how much I need to like do these things? And I'm like, I don't think I'm smart enough for this. I don't think I'm well equipped for that. So like I went through this like super dark period of like, I don't know how I'm going to like survive. I don't know how I'm going to live a decent life. I don't know how I'm going to build a family. I don't know how I'm going to do any of these things. And then like cut to like 5 years later, I came into Bitcoin in 2022, like at like near the end, you know, Bitcoin, like I had seen Bitcoin hit 60,000, and I had kind of ignored it, because I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, it's probably just a scam. Like, I have no idea what crypto is. And so I ignored it for a few months, and I came back to it. And when I came back to it, it was like 17,000, and it was back on the run up. You know what I mean?
Holy
so I came
shit,
back.
I'm so jealous of you.
And I'm thinking to myself, what is this thing that was at 60,000 like a couple of like 8 months ago, and now it's at 17,000, and why is this important? And this became this primer of like learning about it. And I went through that shitcoin journey, man. I was buying, well, I wasn't buying, I was getting all those like on Coinbase, like you do the little like educational things, and they give you like $3 of Solana, $3 of this. So I was getting all these things, right? And I was listening to the Bitcoin Fundamentals podcast, and I was learning the fundamentals. And because I was primed, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, I get that. I get it. And so I was starting to learn more and just absorb all this information. Dude, I went from like listening to like 2 podcasts a day to listening to like 15. You know, I was just consuming everything. And I mean, I don't remember like when I actually like when the light bulb clicked for me. I don't remember that Bitcoin maxi moment, but I feel like it was a gradual and then sudden just drop off the cliff. I was like full fucking maxi, and I was telling everybody about it. And so I've been in maxi mode for about 2 years now, you know, just loving it. And one thing that for me, and I talk about it on this show a lot, is it gives me hope, man. Like I was in a dark place. I was in a very dark place, and I don't need to get into it, but like the hope and the energy that Bitcoin has given me to live this quality life is just, it's just absolutely astounding, man. And I'm sure that you've probably come across something.
I feel you. I know that because miners, they're from all ages, and they're the people listening to this podcast most likely, right? Like if there's an older listener right now, like they may not understand how tough it is to just see the fact that the future, like we're the first generation that is seeing the future darker than the past. Like it's not brighter, it's not better. It's actually, in the best case scenario, it's equal, right? if we're lucky, we're gonna get to live the same lives as our parents. And if we're not, we're gonna have to like, go back to the 30s, 20s, right? Like tough times, right? Like there's no hope in the fiat system. But for us, like, so I was in the same place as you, right? I was also like, no, I don't think as dark as yours, but I was also like, you know, like a dark realism. I don't know how to call it. Like I was being realistic, and it was dark. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit. If I try to be like realistic about my options, and let's be honest, dude, we're white guys, cisgender, all that bullshit. We're like the stereotype of, hey, he's gonna make money, right? I'm from Europe, so I speak a few languages. Family's international, so I'm in the good position, right? I'm in a fucking good position. I speak good English, even though I'm Spanish, right? And I lived in Spain most of my life, so I'm in a good position. And even for me, it would have been tough. It's like, that's fucking depressing. And then I still remember when I discovered Bitcoin, man, you breathe. You like suddenly take your first air,
Yeah.
breath. And it's like, holy shit, I was underwater all this time. Help.
Yeah. And I think about that often. Is like, I look at the people around me, and I feel like I'm a very empathetic person trying to like understand people's situations and whatnot. And I see that darkness that you're talking about. I see that sadness and this look of desperation, like where people are like, how do I breathe? I can't breathe. I'm struggling under the weight and the pressure of this world, and I can't even save money.
Yeah. And then also not just like people are, in Spanish we say derrotado. They've been already like not destroyed, but like they've given up, right? They've given up. They're like, fuck it. That's what we have. That's the card I've been dealt, whatever. And you're like, nah, dude, you can actually like get another, like you can drop all your cards and get another set of cards if you just learn Bitcoin. Or actually you can switch a few of the cards. If you like the others, you can keep them. But with Bitcoin, it actually gives you the clarity to say, hey, yo, I can actually change cards. I don't need to play with this deck of hands, right? But anyway, if you don't mind, let's move into Bitcoin mining.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, we're a Bitcoin mining podcast. We're talking about Bitcoin philosophy. Like, it's great. It's all good stuff. But no, you're right. Let's dive in. You've been working in the Bitcoin mining space from a publicly traded company. You've been kind of seeing the economic numbers play out and everything. Tell us a little bit about the trends happening in Bitcoin mining and who are some of the key players.
So the main trend that is happening, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm now working for the man pool, is decentralization. We're trying to bring decentralization back into Bitcoin mining. So Bitcoin, as it is, it's already the most decentralized anything in the world, like you can think of, right? From software to company, organization to religion, it's super decentralized, right? Compared to anything else. But there's one point that is lacking, and that's Bitcoin mining. It all goes back to Stratum V1, and we can talk about it later, and how it shifted the power mechanics from miners build the blocks to pools build the blocks. And it has to do with the 2015 to 2017 block size wars, and how we all discovered that, hey, actually centralization in mining could be dangerous, So I think decentralization in mining is one of the biggest topics going on. It's not an economic topic, so I guess I'll also mention another that it's more economics, right? It's more like what people care, the ka-ching, the dollars, well, or the sats in this case. And that would be the fact that we are moving into a world of Bitcoin mining where if you don't have a secondary source of revenue, you are not going to make it. So in that sense, if all of these like pure play Bitcoin miners, they're not going to stay like that unless something happens. And we can talk about that. Like, if you want, I can go in depth.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a little bit more. I know it's not a take that a lot of people want to hear, but it's the reality of the situation. Yeah. So let's dive into it.
Yeah. So basically, you can summarize it in the fact that pure Bitcoin mining in the future will not be profitable, will not be fiat or nominal profitable, in the sense of whatever you mine today, if you sell it, you're not going to make money, right? If you're just doing mining and if you're only accounting in fiat. And that's where we get two different strands. We have the decentralization strand, the whole miners, where if you have a bid-ax and that bid-ax is costing you, I don't know, let's make it up, 10 cents of electricity per day, and you're only getting 8 cents in sats in Bitcoin back, you're not going to give a shit. You're not going to turn it off, right? If you have 1, 2, or 3 bid-axes or 4 terahashes of a bid-ax Q or whatever the newest bid-ax is, you're still going to have it on. So if enough people do that, then you see that they're going to start pushing profitability downwards. That's the first topic, and they don't care about fiat nominal returns, right? Because in a way, what they're doing is they're using their BitAxe or their mini miner or their small home mining situation to act as a non-KYC exchange. I give you electricity, I pay my KYC electricity bills on fiat, but I get freshly minted, no KYC Bitcoin straight into my wallet, right? So that's one side. And then you also get the other side, and that's let's say the markets. Well, no, let's not say market, but like the enterprise miners, right? Anyone who actually has more than 3 miners, I would say, like more than 3 S19s or S21s or M60s. That would be like starting to get into an enterprise miner, regardless of the size, because at that point, it's starting to have somewhat of a financial impact in your life, right? It's not just like a cost of Netflix in electricity, right? And the capital of a TV and a fridge, right? It's more. And at that point, what you get is you have 3 ways to go. You can go heat reuse. That's the first one. Either dry coconuts, dry cocoa, so dry chocolate. They do that in the Virunga Park in somewhere in Africa. I think it's Nigeria or Kenya or one of those. Or you can dry mangoes, or you can dry beef, or you can dry fish like they do in the north, or you can actually use that heat, pump it into like if you already have your miner submerged, your second water loop could go into a pond where you actually have aquaculture and you have fish there, right? You're actually not just drying fish, but you're actually creating fish, right? Or you're actually creating I actually saw once a project that was a 3-pronged approach. It was something like the heat of the miner is used to heat up a pool where there's plankton or something, or algae. That algae is then used to feed some fish or some crabs, and then those crabs are used to fish some. I know, yeah. And then when they die, like the excrements, so you sell the fish, but the excrements, they go back to the plankton plus the heat of the miners, right? So
Yeah.
you can do stuff like that, right? That would be the heat reuse. Or also just district heating, heat up houses in New York, for example, still works a lot with centralized district heating with vapor, but also Helsinki and other northern cities in Europe, you do that. Then you can also do asset unshackling, meaning you're taking off the shackles, right? You're like freeing this asset. And that's basically all of the flared gas things, and also like methane from landfills. You can also do that, right? It tends to go in that direction, but it's not limited to that. Hopefully people find different ways of doing that. And then also using, that could also go together with the next point, which would be renewable energy. So improving the economics of renewable energy projects. That would be the third one. Where at that point, even if Bitcoin mining loses money, it's still making money, because let's say you have like Bitcoin mining on a market basis, right? Let's say you're in the middle of Texas. Actually, no, already everyone's in Texas. But let's say you were in Montana, right? Electricity is going for 7 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. But with your old S21s, because it's 2028, you're not going to make a profit. But guess what? Your cousin knows a dude, and he has a new wind farm somewhere in Montana, and it has like a 3-year interconnect wait, meaning it's just sitting there, it's built out, and it's just waiting for someone from the government to come hook it up. Well, you might as well go to them and say, hey, we have 2 options. You charge me 1 cent per kilowatt hour every time that it's on, or we do revenue share. And for both of them, regardless of how old the machines are, they're going to make some profit, right? So you actually don't care how low the hash price will go, because the hash price cannot go negative.
Right.
It will always approach 0, but it will not go negative. I don't believe so, at least. But it will go to a point where if you're just CleanSpark, for example, or Marathon or Riot, any of these big guys, right, and you're just doing pure play Bitcoin mining, you're going to be losing money. You're actively going to be losing money. And if you actually check out some of the research that I've been seeing on Twitter. There's this guy, he's somewhat of a Bitcoin hater, but he does a good analysis of Bitcoin mining. I think he is SRS Rocco, I think so, with double C. He actually has this analysis of, hey, look at the share dilution of miners, and look at like how much they're just ransacking their miners, meaning they're actually not profitable, because if they have to dilute their shares so much, and this is not the Michael Saylor play, right? Of like, now they're starting to do it. Marathon is starting to do it. CleanSpark did it also, but in a different way, because they're actually not going to buy Bitcoin. They're just going to fund infrastructure, meaning they're going to fund future Bitcoin acquisitions, right, through mining. But they would dilute their shares by like 5 times or something like that, meaning they printed 4 times or 5 times the amount of shares that they had 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And what they do is basically they sell you the shares and they get the cash, and with that they're able to supplement the losses that they've had, because something that most of the publicly traded Bitcoin miners don't do is take into account the capital expenditure into their ongoing costs. So they end up paying $1 billion to make 500 million, so to speak.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these would be either you're a I don't give a fuck about dollars type of guy, just mining at home, small scale. So hey, if I'm making 20% loss, meaning I'm paying $100 in electricity, but I'm getting $80 in Bitcoin, you don't give a fuck. So you're actually not being economically rational for a fiat standard, but you're being economically rational for a Bitcoin standard, because you know that by the time that you sell or trade the Bitcoins in 5-10 years, you're going to have made money for sure. Like your purchasing power has increased. Or you do one of the 3 methods, either heat reuse, asset unshackling, or renewable energy.
Yeah, and so there's this huge misconception about, the energy efficiency of Bitcoin miners. And, if you're going to be a Bitcoin miner, you need to buy the most efficient, latest generation machines, which these machines are top of the line, which means they're top of the price. I think the S21 right now, the first edition is going for like 8 to 12 grand right now. I don't know the exact price on. Yeah, they're insane.
Moly.
And that's not even talking about the SXP hydros or, things like that. But the fact of the matter is that in my opinion, and I think you might agree, is the only time that you need to 100% absolutely go out and buy that generation of machine is when you're doing the direct conversion of purchasing electricity and transferring it and turning it into Bitcoin. When you're not doing anything else, you're not subsidizing that business with heat reuse, you're not subsidizing it with the renewable energies or the asset unshackling. You have to have the newest, most efficient generation in order to stay profitable. But what the problem with that is, when you're looking at 1,000, 100,000 machines, extrapolate that out, that's a lot of money for the cost of acquisition for your operational expenditure. When you can purchase an S19 for like, I think the XPs are going for like $500 right now. You purchase an XP and then you go and you stick it up next to a hydro-powered dam, because they have all of this extra energy that they're just wasting at all hours of the day, because it's between the hours of 5 and 9 p.m. that people are actually using the power. All of a sudden you have this huge transition into being able to profit, because you're getting your power for 1, 2, 3 cents a kilowatt hour, and you paid $500 for a miner. Yeah, it's not the most efficient, but it doesn't need to be.
But the time to return investment is so much faster.
Yeah.
And also the capital expenditure that you have per megawatt is so much lower, right? And actually, I actually don't believe, even if you're doing pure Bitcoin mining, like if you're one of these big publicly traded Bitcoin miners, and the only way you can make money is by buying the latest ASICs, which, top of the line efficiency and all of that, you're not doing your job right. Because the number one thing you need to do is bring the energy price down. And by bring the energy price down, what I mean is find the cheap energy, source the cheap energy. Either pay people to do that for you, or you already have, you know, the right contacts or something. But like, or do what Riot has been doing with the ancillary services, which, by the way, that's also another part of like the renewable energy side of things, where like Bitcoin miners that are doing these ancillary services, right, in the ERCOT grid, that also has to do with the renewable energy, because they're plugging the gaps that the renewable energy put into the grid, so to speak, right? So I forgot to mention that. But yeah, so many things to remember. But you either do that, which at that point you're already starting to use like the future methods of mining Bitcoin, secondary sources of revenue, or you're not doing your job right. And I actually believe that breed of Bitcoin miners will go away. The big scale Bitcoin only type of miners will go away. Like, because it just doesn't make sense. Because if you spend 20, 40, 100, $200 million on top of the line ASICs, by the time you get them, first of all, it's been already a minute. Like, usually they take a while to get to you, especially in the quantities that they order. And then also, like, you will be doing you will be cash flow positive, but you will have like your return investment will not happen at any point. So you're actually not returning capital to your shareholders. So you're actually not a sustainable business. You're a zombie company to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we see with all of these share dilutions, right? Could any Bitcoin miner have survived or made a return on investment, like publicly traded Bitcoin miner, of course, over the past 4 years, 3 years? I don't know. I would actually garner the guess that the ones that diluted their shares the most are the ones that should have died first.
Yeah.
Right? Because I haven't looked at all of the miners and how much they have changed their share count and all of that. But you know, like,
yeah, and you know,
biggest,
this is why I feel, and I've said it multiple times, this is why I feel like the rabbits, as Bob Burnett would call them, are like, in some way, we're competing with these giant mega miners, these huge corporations, because yes, our power is a little bit more expensive because we can't negotiate power purchase agreements and stuff like that on such a small scale. But because we're integrating these heat reuse applications and different aspects into different businesses, you know, we're competing on such a larger scale and, in a sense, making more profit on the back end.
Well, the funny thing is, you're actually not competing against anyone except the difficulty the difficulty target in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Like,
I didn't think about it.
That's the thing. You never compete against anyone else. You're competing against yourself, in a sense of like you got to compete on how good you can source the energy. Can you source it good enough? That's the first thing. Can you source it good enough? The energy, the rack space, the miners. If you can't, then you're not even in business. But then the question, like, it is a direct relationship between how well you can source all three of these things. Because if you can only source energy well, but you have no fucking clue how to build data centers and you have no fucking clue how to source miners, then it's worth nothing, right?
Yeah.
Unless you contract someone else out. And if you can do 2 out of 3, it's still nothing. You need the 3 things, right? Rack space, energy, and ASICs, right? And that's also, there's a different discussion that we can talk about, and that's the whole security budget thing of Bitcoin mining, which I think nobody has gotten right so far. Well, I do remember hearing someone put it more or less in the right words, but anyway, we can talk about that later.
Yeah. And also, I mean, on that, you know, the procuring of the 3 different elements there, Bob Burnett, I love Bob Burnett because he tells great stories and he talks about the economics and the finance situation. But there's a cycle. You got this 4-year cycle, and at no point during a 4-year cycle do all 3 of these things align. You know, like during a bear market, it is really easy. It's really easy to get infrastructure for cheap. You know, you can get these miners, you can get these machines super cheap, but generally the other aspects of it are hard to come by. You know, getting financing for those machines, getting people to partner with you and purchase those machines is very difficult. During a bull market, these machines, everyone's throwing money at you,
but the machines
are way up here. You know what I mean? So it's always this like this gradual process that's changing and flip-flopping back and forth. So being a Bitcoin miner, dude, is not an easy task. Like we talked about it before we started recording, is that like Bitcoin miners are the special breed of people that are like they're partially insane, but they're also like super innovative and creative people.
And also the most bullish on Bitcoin.
Well, yeah.
Because you're actually betting the house.
Yeah.
Like you're more than full in. You're actually, and also you're betting the house in the future. Because
Yeah.
people that just buy Bitcoin now, yeah, well, you just bought Bitcoin. And yes, you're betting into the future. But these guys, well, us, the Bitcoin miners, we're betting that in the future we will be able to make money, right? We'll make Bitcoin.
It's the whole point of capitalism, to be honest. Like, why would you build a business if you don't think 5 years from now it's going to be more profitable and more economically viable than it is today?
Exactly.
There's no point. Okay, I want to shift the conversation a little bit. We alluded to it earlier. You're working with demand pool, and this is this is the first so far. This is going to be the first implementation of Stratum V2. Now, I want you to kind of just clarify this for me. I am kind of slightly confused on the differences between Stratum V1 and Stratum V2. So if you could kind of help me understand it a little bit, it might help the audience understand it too.
Yeah, I think a great way to understand it is to go through a bit of a historical walk, so to speak, through the archives of Bitcoin mining. And at the beginning, if you wanted to mine Bitcoin, well, at the beginning, mining and having a node and having a wallet were all integrated together into one software, and that was Bitcoin Core. And if you wanted to get Bitcoins, you would just open Bitcoin Core, and there was a button that said Get Bitcoins, and that would just actually put your machine to mine, right? And at the beginning, it would work super well, like because there was nobody else mining except Satoshi with their, with his machines and the Satoshi pattern and all of that. But as time goes on, you end up having GPUs get into the race, and you end up having also, apart from GPUs, more people join the race.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point between, November 2010, it got to the point where someone had to launch the first pool. At that point, you had these you had the Bitcoin node, which has all the information that you need to create a block, which is the thing that you're going to mine on, plus the miner, the actual thing hashing. You have them fully separated, but then now you also introduce a third party in between. Not really in between at this point. It's still like a triangle, right? They all kind of work together. Mostly everyone is just like working for themselves. They have their own node connected to other people, and they're choosing their own blocks, but they're just sharing their rewards, right? Like, so they mine to one place and they share the rewards. This way they reduce variance, they reduce the risk, all of that. And then the problem gets that the protocols used till that point to transmit all that data are not enough. So someone had to come up with Stratum V1. If I remember correctly, that's Slush, the guys from the first pool, which is now Brains pool. They created the first protocol, and in a way, they kind of just hacked it together in a good enough way, right? They just did something, they put something together, and it was good enough. The thing is, it was so good enough, right? It was good at that time, and nobody needed anything else, that it had great adoption. And with great adoption comes path dependence and network effects. So years down the line, you have everyone using Stratum V1 to communicate. And that's when we get into the block size wars. And we realize, we actually changed something about this triangle that we had, the pool at the top, and then the node and the miner talking to each other, and then, collaborating with the pool to share rewards. We shifted it and we turned it into a flat line. And we put the pool between the node and the miner. So now it's the pool that owns the node and is deciding which transactions go there, and also not just which transactions go into the pool, into the block, but also each miner or each client, let's say, regardless of how big they are or how many ASICs or how much energy they have, the pool is going to be the one who tells them what they're going to do. So what you're going to be working on. You're working on this block, you're working on that block. And the problem with that is that we realize that the miners just become mercenaries. they're not sovereign anymore. They
Mhm.
can easily be captured. And we saw that with the fact that Antpool, not Antpool, sorry, Bitmain had a backdoor to most of the ASICs. And they could have easily exploited that to just who knows what, but potentially most likely to make the wrong side of the block size wars win, right? And at that point, even if you won or you didn't, suddenly your machine was mining for the wrong chain, and good luck. You should have checked if it was open source, right? So after that point, we realized, oh my god, we made a mistake. We as a collective, right? We made a mistake because Slush, he was just solving a problem. That's what miners do, right? We just solve problems. We do it as quick as possible. Dude, I've seen some setups that are honestly scary. Like people just plugging in machines, not even a data center, just like out in the field, just mining Bitcoin, right? That's who we are. We just want to mine somehow. We don't need to have all the bells and whistles of a tier 4 data center, security and redundancy. We don't give a fuck. I actually believe miners, the whole tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 data center thing. We actually invented the tier 0 and the tier -1 of data centers. Like, I still have this picture. It's searing in my mind of like somewhere in the Chinese backcountry, around 2018, 19, I believe. You see this like mountains in the back, or not even mountains, but you see like the slope of a mountain full of trees, and there's a river, or you can guess there's a river down there, and then you see a road going up and curving, and that's demarking like the area, like, okay, this is what we're working in. And between the photographer, whoever's taking a picture, and the road, there's this plot of land that doesn't have grass, and it's flat, and it just has racks one after the other, and there's ASICs, and there's a cable, one thick cable that goes out and goes off the picture. And apparently someone was mining there, and there must have been like 400 ASICs there. Like, it's not like 5 ASICs, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of China, and it was full green. So I imagine it rains there at least twice a week.
Oh god,
right?
that's terrifying.
Exactly. So that's what we do. I know, but that's
Yeah.
that's who we are. We don't give. That's tier -1 data center. You don't even need one, right? And in a way, that's what we did back all together back in 2011. I think that's when the first Stratum, or 2012. That's when the first Stratum protocol was launched. Where we all just looked at it and we're like, does it work? Is it better than the previous one? Perfect. Let's go with it. Nobody really asked what were the trade-offs. During 2015, 2017, we fucked around and we realized, hey, we found out, right? And that's when we get Matt Corallo. He's a Bitcoin Core developer. He launched Better Hash, which was an attempt to fix those issues. But it was failed. It had a few problems. I couldn't right now describe which ones, but I know that it just didn't hit the mark. It wasn't good enough because the Bitcoin mining scene already had that path dependence and network effects, right? So the solution doesn't just have to be marginally better. It has to be exponentially better. It has to be like an actual, like, it has to be, you're hitting the table and letting everyone know, hey, we're here, right? And you should join us. So that's when around 2020, 2021, around that time. So as I was getting into Bitcoin, our CTO with a few other people launched the SRI, which is a Stratum reference implementation. And that's when the actual work to create Stratum V2 started. I think Brains implemented a partial version of Stratum V2 in 2020, end of 2021, around there. And why do I say partial? Because one of the problems was this path dependence, right? And this network effects that Stratum V1 already had. And in order to make it as easy as possible for any miner or any pool to move over to Stratum V2, the developers had to game out and figure out all of the different setups that they could have. So let's say that the pool is Stratum V1, but the miner wants to be Stratum V2. Okay, how do they communicate? Or the pool is Stratum V2, but the miner is still in Stratum V1. How do they communicate? Or perhaps they both are in Stratum V1, but they want to use some of the features of Stratum V2. How do we, right? Or both are in Stratum V2, right? They can also do that. Or perhaps, and that gets a step further, perhaps the miner wants to build its own blocks. Then what happens there? Or what if only the pool wants to build the blocks and the miner doesn't give a fuck? They just want to do the upgrade, like a new iOS 17 or iOS 18 on your iPhone and just keep going. You don't want to switch to the Sam Pixel and download Graphene OS and do the whole thing, right? They just want to switch and that's it. They don't want to have their own node and anything. So that's where a lot of work went into Stratum V2. And the main improvements of Stratum V2 versus Stratum V1 are, well, the fact that Stratum V1, when it was created, it was just plain text JSONs. So meaning it's like, imagine WhatsApps. They were sending WhatsApps, plain text WhatsApps or emails back and forth. So the pool would tell the miner, hey, here's the data, here's the previous block hash, here are the few transactions to create your Merkle tree. This is the output address that you have to send the Bitcoin, right? So that you create your Coinbase and all of that. Get going. And that would be like a plain text. And then the miners, the way the pools work in order to like check our work without having to like literally be micromanaging us, although on a human scale they are micromanaging us, but in reality they're just looking at, let's say, what would it be, one quintillionth, so a fraction of our work, like a zero. They're looking at 0.00001% of our work, because otherwise if we were to send all of our attempts to the pool, they would just get gazillions of WhatsApp messages at the same time, and they would not be able to process it. So what they do is they look at Bitcoin and they say, okay, there's this nice mechanism called the difficulty adjustment, where you can actually find the responses. The responses here happen every 10 minutes. Perfect. So what if I want to check the work of my miners every 2 seconds or 5 seconds, right? Then you go to the miner and you tell them, hey, you have to hit this difficulty. Well, actually, it's lower, right? You have to go, it's a high difficulty, but it's a low number. So you have to hit this low number, but I'm actually going to put it much higher for you, because this way you are going to be sending me only those shares that you get that are above or below, depending on how you think about it, that mark. And every now and then you will actually find a block, right? But at least I'm not checking the trillions, because people don't think about this. A bidax is doing 1 trillion hashes per second. So if you would send 1 trillion attempts, so hey pool, here's the nonce and here's the hash, and here are all the data that you gave me. If we were to send that, even if it's just a WhatsApp, we would be sending 1 trillion data points per second just for one bidax. Let's not talk about an S19, and let's also not talk about a full data center full of them, right?
Right.
So then what they do is they say, hey buddy, you manage yourself, only let me know when you're above this threshold. And then the good part is, once you get the nonce plus the hash, you can actually calculate what's the difficulty of that. You can see, oh, this attempt has this difficulty, so it was 100 times below the difficulty needed to become a block of Bitcoin, right? And with that, then they can quantify the difficulty, and they can say, okay, well, not the difficulty, but the amount of work that you're doing. So you send a share every 2 seconds, and you have this difficulty, and the difficulty goes like this. Well, we can actually, the same way that we calculate the network hash rate, we just look at how many blocks the network finds per day, and what's the difficulty, and then we calculate it. You can actually, people actually don't know this, but if you go to like Coinmetrics or Glassnode and you choose blocks per day and also the hash rate, like daily hash rate, you will see they match 1-to-1, because we actually don't know the hash rate of the network. We can only guesstimate it or infer it from the amount of blocks that we get per day. So then the pool does the same, but at a much lower difficulty and at a much higher frequency, but not so high that they get a quintillion shares per second, right? Mm-hmm. What's the problem? Till now, with Stratum V1, you have these messages. They're just plain text WhatsApps. Literally, you could just read all of the conversations between the pool and the miner. So there's been cases, or well, no confirmed cases, but if you're in the mines, so to speak, you hear the rumors and you hear the stories. And there's been cases where people have had between 2 and 10% of their hash rate stolen because there was a man in the middle attack where they just get intercept your communications, and they start redirecting a portion of your hash rate. And someone from, I don't know, wherever in the world, from their laptop, just hacked into your communications and is getting a daily paycheck in Bitcoin without having done anything. And you're actually losing. Why? Because it's plain text. It's not encrypted. Furthermore, you're sending it in JSONs, meaning you're sending it in WhatsApps. You're sending it in plain text. You and me, we can read it. But there's no humans involved in the sending and receiving of shares, right? So why are we doing, it's almost like you and me were talking English, but before you hear my message, I tell my friend, he translates it to German to your friend, and your friend hears it in German and tells you in English. What are these two guys doing here? We can speak in English. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Stratum V2, something that it does is, hey guys, go back home, have a beer, have a schnitzel, have fun, but not with us, because we're going to start talking in binary, and also we're going to start encrypting it. So these guys, they can go home, so we get better efficiency, we get lower latency, we get lower empty blocks. That's a thing. So we actually get lower empty blocks, and we also get the encryption at the same time. So less data, more secure data. So, and faster data as well. Also, that helps with acceptance rates and stale shares and rejection of shares, which all impact the amount of money you make from the pool side, right? How much payout you receive. So that's that's kind of the main improvement. But then the secondary main improvement, and that's where a lot of the work went into Stratum V2, was gaming how to allow Bitcoin miners to create their templates again, while also allowing pools to create their templates and communicate them to the miner. Because, hey, path dependence, network effects. Right now, tell me of a single miner that has a node connected, or a node in any of their mines. None. It just doesn't exist. A miner is just a miner. He's just a mercenary. He's selling his hash rate, his fighting power, to sometimes not even best bidder, but whoever got him first. Oh no, I'm just mining in Luxor because I like them, or whatever. Have you checked if they pay you the best? Not really. I mean, I'm fine with them. I'm with F2 Pool because whatever, they have these incentives. Okay, but do you know what you're doing? No, I just have my machines running. Do you check their transactions? Do you know if they're censoring transactions? You know, or that was tough. Who was it? I think it was Luxor or Marathon. They were playing with these ordinals things, and then they just they ended up mining a false block or something. I don't remember who exactly. It's not that block from Luxor where it's like one ordinal, where they use the 4 megabytes for one ordinal. It's not that one. It's another one where it was like literally they just mined it, an incorrect block, an invalid block. So that was a whole thing, right? So if you're not even checking that, are you even a miner? No, you're just a mercenary. You're
just a hasher.
A minion. You're just a hasher. You're a compute provider, right? Yeah. So, but that has a lot of path dependence. We cannot transition millions of miners and data centers to all having their own node, also like production ready node, right? Because people with Raspberry Pis will tell you they fucking fail every second, right? Imagine if your pool was dependent on that, right? Or not your pool, but your mining, your data center, right? Suddenly you would have 2 hours of downtime. You cannot have that, right? So a lot of work went into allowing or enabling miners to start mining their own blocks, while also accepting that, hey, this is the reality. Miners don't have nodes. Miners, some of them, they don't even want to think about it. They're just hashers. They're mercenaries, and they're happy being mercenaries, right? They don't want to be freedom fighters and free thinkers. You know, they're fine. Okay, so let's still allow them to enjoy the benefits of, you know, encrypted communication and better performance, without having to, you know, go through all the hassle. So that's where a lot of work went, and now we actually have it production ready, and we will launch throughout 2025 with Demand Pool. And that's, you said it right. Demand Pool is the first pool to implement Stratum V2 fully and only. So we haven't touched, and we don't plan on touching Stratum V1. Meanwhile, I think it was Brains, they implemented it partially. I'm not entirely sure of what type of partiality, but you can see here how perhaps they chose only the binary and the encryption, or perhaps they already allow you to mine your own blocks. I actually believe it's more the former and not the latter. So they're actually just securing the communications, which, hey, it's fucking common sense, let's be honest. But we are the first ones where we're actually going to be encouraging all of our miners to, hey, have a node, be a good Bitcoiner, you know? So did I answer your question? Did I provide a full picture of Stratum V1, Stratum V2?
Yeah, I think you did. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think I'm still a little confused on it, but you know, it's just to be expected with these really interesting concepts. Ah, man, how do I gather my notes here, my thoughts? There was a lot, and I think the biggest problem for most people, like coming into this, looking at it from an outsider's perspective. I mean, you work in this all day long. This is your bread and butter, so it's a lot easier for you to grasp these technical conversations and concepts. I guess for someone who's looking at it from the outside perspective, how, like, ideologically, if I want to be a Bitcoin miner, not a hasher, I don't want to be a mercenary. I don't want to be somebody who's just providing my hash rate to any pool and allowing them to control the block templates for me. How can I start to implement either Stratum V2 or even something like Datum to give me the ability to choose and create these block templates? I mean, this is still something that's very confusing to me.
Yeah, in that sense, both Datum and Stratum V2, they're kind of the same thing, to be honest with you. Like, same. If you've ever gone to Southeast Asia, you will appreciate this. You know, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, they have this saying there: same but different, but still same.
Still same.
And I think that's just magic. I think it's wonderful how they say that, because that's kind of the difference between Datum and Stratum V2. There was actually a lot of confusion from everyone in the Stratum V2 field, or like camp, when Datum released, because it was like, guys, we're already here. But looking backwards, at least for me personally, so speaking for myself, I think it's good for the system. You don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, even though I highly trust all of the guys working on this. I don't read code, so I have to trust, right? But like, from what I've seen, Stratum V2 didn't take 4 years to build, or 3.5 or whatever, because they were just twiddling their thumbs and looking at the sky and the stars, right? If you actually go to the Stratum V2 website, they actually have a pretty nice website. The documentation is extensive and clear and well written. And actually, remember, this is before AI, and I don't believe AI would be able to like properly explain this. So this is all man hours, voluntary man hours, most of the time, right? So anyway, that's besides the point. But I personally believe it's good, because free market, well, like in the free market, the best idea wins. And who knows? Perhaps we both have the best idea, and that idea being decentralized Bitcoin mining. Because from my point of view, like, there's two camps. There's the let's decentralize Bitcoin mining, and we're standing there next to the OSMU guys, you know, Open Source Miners United guys. We're standing there next to the Bob Burnett's of the world, doing small mining, you know, like guerrilla mining, if you will, and like also like the gridless guys mining in Africa, right? We're also standing with them, right? All in one corner. And then there's Datum, and there's us, and we're all in the same corner, right? Let's not fight amongst each other, because we have a big beast on the other side of the ring, and it's not pretty, and it's not good, and it doesn't fare well for anyone in the system, right? Over the long term. I forgot actually what you were asking, but
well, I was just trying to understand how
to
implement it.
How to implement it? Well, you could either start mining with Brains or with Ocean now, but that would only give you partial, like part of it, and not all of it. I know that the guys at Ocean, they actually have this, like, you can choose which template you're mining with, but I would say you're still not sovereign, because there's still a boss, right? There's still someone telling you what to do, even though you have a bit of a choice. Oh, do I want blue ice cream or red ice cream? Yeah, but you're still having ice cream because someone told you you're going to have ice cream, so to speak, right? So, and there's only one way to make this right, and it's run your own node. So by the time we actually launch, we're going to be launching over the course of 2025, demand pool. We will have created a suite, so to speak, or an app, so to speak, where you just install it into your node, and then you connect it to your operations, and that will smooth everything out. So that app will take care of everything for you. You don't need to think about job declarator or template provider or the proxy or anything. It's all, or even the mempool, because we have done a few things with the mempool which are pretty cool, like reworking the mempool, like making it more efficient and better. Like this like people have worked on Stratum V2 and now also on the mempool for a reason. Like there's reasons for it, and they will hopefully show at the end of the year your balance sheet, so to speak, right, and your income statement with higher profits. And the main way to get fully on board is to run your own node.
Yeah.
And if someone's going to run their own node, I'm going to give them a warning. Don't do it on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Just get a mini PC or actually build a fully proper PC, with Ethernet connections, with a few gigabytes of RAM. And by a few, I mean like more than 16. You want a redundant machine. Actually, who was it? I know this is something that some company does with Lightning, where they have a few Lightning nodes at the same time interconnected. So even if one of them fails, they still have a few backup ones. And I feel like most miners should start doing the same. You should have your own node in your own data center, and then also potentially have a node in the cloud, like a backup, cloud node. And then also as a third backup, you can always just say, hey, if my node is not responding, just communicate directly to the pool, right? But in order to be a proper Bitcoin miner and not just another compute provider, like another just fiat miner, you need to have your own node. You need to have and run your own node.
This is something that I'm not gonna lie, kind of scares me. As a Bitcoin maximalist, as someone who believes in the ethos of Bitcoin and what Bitcoin stands for, I'm scared because the more people that we onboard to Bitcoin and the more diluted the education gets around that core ethos of Bitcoin, these people that are joining the network are starting to mine, like they're not going to believe in the same things. And it really, I'm scared that changes what Bitcoin is and what it becomes in the future. And so I really do believe that this education is super important around things like running your own node, being able to complete your own block templates. And I know that it's very confusing, but it's something that people need to start just chipping away at and trying to understand. I myself, and I just got a node running probably 6 weeks ago, and that was simply because I had Matt from Start9 send me a node that I could run. It's a beautiful piece of software. It's a piece of hardware, and it's really easy. But until then, it was super difficult for me to okay, what components do I need? What do I need in order to do this and that? And how do I build it? So it's very confusing, and it's not easy for everyone to do it. But I think that there needs to be more education around this stuff specifically.
Yep, 100%. And that's actually one of the things that we're trying to push forward. One of the, I guess, good sides of working for demand pool is that we take the idea of running a node very seriously, and we're actually very happy to be on board with Stratum V2, because in a way what we're seeing is that we're going to be pushing for fertilizing the ground for a node proliferation. That's how we call it, because we want to have a node in every data center or in every Bitcoin mining operation, right? And then right now I think there's about 24,000 nodes in the world, out of which one of them is yours and one of them is mine. And hopefully by the time, let's say in 2 years, if Stratum V2 takes off and starts doing well, and more miners start mining for themselves and not just become a compute provider for a third party, then I think we should see 30K nodes. Why not 40K?
Right.
Fuck it, double it, 50K. Right. So, because if you think about every data center, Bitcoin mining data center, there is a lot of them and they're everywhere. And
Yeah,
also the
and they're
good
all
part
different
is
sizes.
exactly, and also the good part is now you're suddenly incentivized to run a Bitcoin node, because just a Bitcoin node running a Bitcoin node by itself, you don't really care. You couldn't. There's privacy benefits. Okay, you're checking the blockchain yourself. Okay, but now it's like, hey, go mine Bitcoin, and by the way, run a node. Why? Because it makes you more money. Because with Stratum V2, you actually do between 5 to 10% more Bitcoin per terahash per day. So it's a no-brainer. Like,
Right.
who doesn't want to make more money? So yeah.
Yeah.
We also need to talk about the FPPS dying.
Yes,
That's
yes,
that's something I love to talk about.
that's probably the last question we'll touch on, and then we'll start to wrap it up. It just
Awesome.
yeah, why is FPPS dying, and what are the other ways to implement Bitcoin payout schemes?
Yeah. So FPPS is dying because it went from being a payout mechanism for miners to becoming an insurance product. It's just that the miners didn't realize, or they did, but they didn't realize that this insurance product is actually more expensive than the payout mechanism. So I like to give the example, the metaphor of going to an exchange, a Coinbase, Binance, and they tell you, oh, 0% fees. Oh yeah, lowest fees on the market. Oh, no fees for putting money in and no fees for taking money out and all of that. But they still make shit ton of money in profit. So where do they get you? Well, it's in the spread. So they say that they have no fees, but you put $1,000 in, you get $1,000 on your Binance wallet inside of the company, right? So it's just the SQL database, SQL database. Then you do the trade, and by the time your money's out, you only have $980 of Bitcoin worth of Bitcoin. What? I thought there was zero fees. But there was a spread in the market, and that spread is invisible. They don't need to talk about it, right? And actually, people like Relay and Bull Bitcoin and River guys, they actually also make money through that. Even if they say like Swan Bitcoin, right? They used to have this like zero fee for DCA. Well, because they know they're going to make a bid on the spread every day, right? Every time you do a DCA, they take a bit off the top. That's it, right? And the same happened with Bitcoin miners. At the beginning, we started with a payout mechanism that is PPLNS or PPS, pay per share. So these shares that I was talking about before, that the pool gives you a certain difficulty that is magnitudes smaller than the difficulty of the Bitcoin network. And then you have to provide all of these proofs of work, I've never better said, to the pool. Those are called shares. And then what they do is at the end of the day or at the end of or when a block is found, they look backwards and they look at all of the shares. They do a weighted average. So they see, Trevor has a 1 exahash operation, but Kenobi only has a 1 pentahash operation. And we both were sending shares once a second, let's say once a second for simplicity. But you have, what is an exahash? 1,000 times more hash rate than me, but we're both sending the same amount of shares. Well, what you will see is that each one of your shares has a difficulty, so it has more zeros in front of it that is 1,000 times more. So what they do is, if we both sent 1,000 shares over the last, or 1,000,000 shares over the last, between the last block was found by the pool and the next one, then they look backwards and they say, oh, Trevor has 1,000,000 shares, Kenobi has 1,000,000 shares, but Kenobi shares get multiplied times 1, but Trevor shares get multiplied times 1,000. Therefore, now we have this weighted average or this weighted distribution, and I will only get 0.1%, and you will get 99.9% because you put 99.9% of the work. But you did it in the time span between the last block was found of the pool and the next one. So then the next iteration was PPLNS. So instead of looking, let's say, the last block was found 2 weeks ago, they will just look at the last 8 hours or the last 2 days. So they will find a time span and say, hey, the moment we find a block, we will look backwards from that moment, and we will account all of the shares in the same weighted average type of way, and that's when we distribute. This way, because there's this thing called pool hopping where people jump off the ship as time goes on, and they try to game the system. But with this, that was somewhat of a fix to that. After that, we got FPPS, and FPPS was like, actually, guess what? we're not even gonna check if a blog has arrived to the pool today. We're just gonna pay you out the expected value, because in a way, I like to use the metaphor of clicks online for advertising, right? Google, Facebook, all of these guys, they sell 100,000 clicks for $100 or $200 to Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Tesla, right? For them to put their ads there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they do it this way? Because they know that in 100,000 clicks, one of them will have a reward, right? Will have a sale of X amount. And then the person buying it knows that. They know that they're going to make, let's say, $400, most likely from 100,000 clicks. And the other person knows that from all of the sellers, they're going to at least make a few of them will at least make enough that they're going to be willing to buy it, right? So it's not that any click will give you the sale, but inside of those 100,000, there's an expected probability, right? So that's what we call the expected value in statistics. And what you basically do is you take all of the revenue from the network that day and divide it by all of the hash rate. And then what you get is this metric, very famous, hash price, dollars per terahash. So then they said, guess what? Your hash rate and your hash rate and your hash rate, regardless of how many exahash or petahash or terahash you have, how big or small, all of your individual units, they have the same expected value. So we're going to start paying you out, because perhaps today we find no blocks, but tomorrow perhaps we find twice as many, right? So we're just going to pay you out. This way we completely de-risk your operations. We make your cash flows very predictable, very easy to project, to, look over time how they're going to evolve, which is not true, because you can also do that with PPLNS, but anyway, whatever. And the same applies. So it's just going to be a 2% fee. So 100%, like let's say you had to make $1 per day per terahash. So $1 per terahash per day. We're going to take 2% off the top, 2 cents. But what they discovered is, oh my God, we went from offering a payout scheme, just a way to pay miners, to offering an insurance. Because miners, if we don't find a block today, tomorrow, and the day after, they're still getting paid every day. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a bank where you can withdraw money before you even put any in, right? So they realized that, hey, we're actually offering an insurance product of, hey, in case you don't find, we collectively don't find a block, we're going to insure you against that. So we're going to pay you regardless. What happens with insurance is expensive, especially when you take into account the huge treasuries that is needed to maintain them. And especially as the price of Bitcoin goes up and Bitcoin mining becomes a bigger industry, the coffers need to get bigger because of the variance and all of that. So then what they start realizing is, we're not making enough money to make this viable. We're actually, selling dollars for pennies.
Right.
Or selling $1 for 80 cents. That makes no sense. But of course, people don't like to say this, but Bitcoin mining pools, they're kind of like a mafia. They're kind of like an oligopoly. They're kind of like a cabal, so to speak, right? And they all know each other. And that's why the fees haven't really gone down to zero, because they know that otherwise they're all going bankrupt. And in 5 years, we have no pools, and then a different type of chaos emerges. So then they were like, hey, there's this other secret tool that we can start pushing. And it's the fact that this FPPS formula of all of the revenues divided by all of the hash rate, we can start tweaking it. Give some excuse to the miner, and then we can turn this formula into a black box that the miners can't really peer into, so they don't really understand the formula, and it's hard for them to backtrack, so to see if the work is correct and the payout is correct. And we're just going to start giving them less. We will still claim a 2% fee or a 1% fee or whatever, but the spread through this black box formula that we're creating, where we're going to take away the 10 least economically rewarding blocks, and also the 10 most. 10 from you, 10 from me, right? That's what they say. Or, we're also going to be adjusting for transaction fees in this way or that way, right? They start playing with the formula, and every pool plays differently. So also you cannot compare between them, right? Because they're not exactly the same formula. And then all the pools, they just start taking a bit more off the top. And you turn around 3 years later, and what started as a small spread has turned into like 10%. 10% of the block is going to
it's like inflation in mining.
It's like inflation in mining, because In a way, they went from selling, I don't know, fruits in the supermarket to now they have to sell iPhones. It's much more complicated. Insurance is much more capital intensive. Selling strawberries, plant them, put some water on them, sell them when they're ready. You know what I mean? So that's what's happened with FPPS. That's also why miners, when they switch to other new payouts schemes, which, yeah, we can put fancy names on them, but basically what they are is PPLNS. So look at the last X hours or X blocks or X whatever the fuck you want, and check how many shares each person provided and adjust it for difficulty, and then we redistribute. That's it. That's PPLNS. So
it seems more sustainable that way versus the FPPS model where
exactly.
You can't see everything. I mean, we want to be able to verify and then like don't trust verify. And if we can't even look into this black box of like how this is working, and then like, well, this pool pays me out more, even though they're supposed to technically pay me less because of the way that it works. Like what's happening here? And there's this like this feeling of like just this gross feeling that makes you feel like, why am I even working with this pool over here versus this other pool over here? I don't know. That's the feeling that I get from it, at least, is just kind of like an ick feeling.
So that's why FPPS is dying, because it's not sustainable. Because it's like fiat. In order to sustain the whole fiat system, you need to constantly, kind of, to a certain degree, you need to constantly be stealing, right? With fiat, we have 2% inflation because they steal the productivity increase plus 2% on top. So they're actually kind of stealing 4 to 5 to 6% per year from everyone in the world, because that's the only way to maintain the fractionally reserved banking and all of the debt, right? The same happens with FPPS. FPPS is the fiat of Bitcoin mining, so to speak. And that's why it's going to die. It's going to die. It's like communism at the same time, right? Because it's going to die out of its own weight. Like, it's going to be so inefficient, so bad for everyone, that the moment it dies, everyone's just going to be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Like, thank God it's gone, right? Like, we didn't need it. We were just stuck there because
like
of, dead weight. Yeah. And there's some merit to it, because right now, the big publicly traded miners, they're actually using FPPS as a way to like talk to auditors and say, hey, look, it's predictable, it's constant revenue, right? And they like it. The regulators and the auditors, they like it because they understand it. It's not so complicated. What the fuck, blocks, and when they come, but you said 10 minutes, it's been 25 minutes since the last block. You're scamming me, right? Shut them down, right? Because literally you will find people like that in, when they're auditing you or like regulating you, right? So for publicly traded miners, it has had some value till this point, because people were not educated, especially in the government. But I feel like now, moving forward, they will look at the cost of the FPPS system and then zero benefits, and then they will look over to the other, and it's clear as day. And even if that doesn't happen, at one point in 4 halvings, the Coinbase rewards will have been so like divided, it will be so much smaller that transactions and transaction fees will be much more valuable. They will actually make up most of the value of the block. At which point FPPS, from like by its own design, will fail. It will actually not be providing actual payouts, like the proper payouts from the blockchain, because, as we know, transaction fees are super volatile. And if, for example, one pool finds a super, like, someone fat fingered 50 Bitcoins as a Bitcoin transaction or something like
right.
that skews all of the FPPS formulas. And suddenly, even if a pool, like another FPPS pool, didn't mine that block, they still owe those 50 bit, or like an equivalent amount of those 50 Bitcoins being found. But they didn't find it, and they're never going to find it. But they still owe that money that they're never going to find, that they never had, to their miners. They just lost money. Another reason to increase the spread.
Man,
nothing's free.
The inflation rabbit hole just goes deeper, man. Like,
man,
it's kind of a sick game that some of these Bitcoin mining pools are playing, in my opinion. Oh shit, man!
I wouldn't say it's sick. It's just the game that they've been thrust into. The same with Stratum V1. They didn't think about it. They
Yeah,
only
yeah,
looked at
they
first
they
order
they
principles.
built something to solve a problem now, and then you kind of extrapolate that into the future, and it no longer
Exactly.
solves the problem, and it actually causes more problems.
And if I may, another of the reasons, something you were saying 5 minutes ago, is like, oh my god, these like black box like formulas, and we cannot look into it. That's also something we're solving with demand pool, because we've implemented a fully transparent and auditable system where miners can actually challenge the pool to like, hey, did you do your work right? And are
Right.
you actually like putting extra shares, like what Spotify is doing now? I don't know if you've heard about this, but Spotify is actually making up artists and they're putting them in playlists. So they're making up new fake artists. They're creating fake songs. So like, for example, in chill jazz, something like that, playlists, or
Yeah.
like piano playlists, whatever, or I don't know, like some of these that you can just do with AI. They're creating these fake artists, and then what happens is, of course, before you had real artists in these real playlists, but now 50% of those plays are going to fake artists that actually belong to Spotify.
Spotify, so they
So
can pay themselves more versus paying out actual artists.
exactly,
Okay, yeah,
exactly. So
I
they're
see
actually
that.
saving money, and in a
Yeah,
way, what if the pools are doing the same? What if they're inserting extra shares that are just made up? How would you know,
you
right?
wouldn't.
People don't know
Yeah,
right now. You would, but now we are actually implementing a fully auditable and fully transparent, let's say a contestable system where any miner of our network can at any point say, "I don't trust you guys." Like,
well,
I'm
yeah,
already mining for myself with my own node, and I'm only relying with you on you for like the payouts, and so that we can like decrease the variance because we're all pulling together. But what if you were not playing fair? I'm actually going to contest you, and the code is open source, like it's there. Well, I'm not sure if it's yet open source, but
but it
it
will
will
be.
be open, yeah, most likely, because
Well,
everything we do
that's
is open
really
source.
good to
Yeah,
hear. I mean, it's enlightening, or it's heartening to know that like these things are coming. We'll be
yeah,
able to
man.
check your work, and we don't have to trust. We can verify. I mean, that's the whole part of Bitcoin. But
You
man,
said it.
like this was like a very very long and like roundabout way to get me to say like I feel like I learned a lot, but I'm also more confused, and I'm like, I need to dive into this. I need to dive into this rabbit hole a little bit further. You know what I mean?
If you have any questions, write them down, send them to me, and I'm happy to come back on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, I can also send you some documents or some websites that people and articles that people can check in case they're confused or they want to explore more.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would say send me some of those articles like where I could start doing the first dipping my toes in the water of understanding some of the stuff on a deeper level, because I think it's
mhm,
important to know how this stuff works in order to be able to have the foundation to verify all of that work. I mean,
yeah.
it's super important. Real quick before we wrap up,
Mhm,
I ask everybody on the podcast the same question. It's a philosophical question. It kind of gets at the heart of why we do Bitcoin. So,
ooh,
Kenobi, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
damn, son. You should have told me about this.
Nah, man, it's a surprise. Boom.
God damn. What does Bitcoin mean to me? I mean, there's the classics: freedom, hope. It does mean that to a certain degree. Um, but I guess I would say a second chance, like for anyone. Like it's like a second chance for anyone. Like regardless of what you did in the fiat world or whatever, you can always just like, or how good or bad you had it on the fiat world, what hand you were dealt when you were born. You can always just hop on the Bitcoin train. And as Lynn Alden says, nobody stops this train. So it's allowing you, especially if you jump in earlier, to reset yourself at a higher point in society and in the world. So there will be something like a second chance. Like people that take the risk, they will reap the reward.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Finally, like you actually, dude, life is risky, man. Like
Yeah.
if you want those big rewards, if you want those big payouts, then sometimes you got to put a lot more skin in the game and take a lot more risk. And we right now in this fiat system, we live in the world of no risk, high reward. And it's like it's not how it's supposed to be. Like if you want to build something that matters, you're going to have to put put things out there and risk losing everything in order to gain that. And that's an important part of, capitalism, for lack of a better phrase.
If you think about it, in a way, the fiat world is also set up like FPPS.
Yeah.
Why?
100%.
Because it's also an insurance product in the sense of daddy state will take care of you. Don't worry. Don't think about it. How does it work? Don't worry. Don't look into it. Even if you tried, you wouldn't be able to understand it because it's so complicated and so convoluted. And we use these weird words, but don't worry. We have pensions. We have social security. We have unemployment. We have everything. Everything's like, if anything wrong happens, here's your insurance. The government is your insurance. And hey, guess what? There's no cost. 0% fees. Well, actually, we know taxes are the cost.
Right.
But then taxes are like the 2%. But then you turn around and you realize that there's a spread and it's called inflation. And that's actually more expensive than the taxes. And it's getting bigger and bigger. So it's the same.
Yep.
It's the same.
It's
Anyway,
insane. That's crazy. That's insane to think about. The FPPS is inflation. It's fiat is inflation. It's wild. Anyways, tell the audience where they can get a hold of you, because I'm sure that there's got to be people out there that want to dive more into this and just have a conversation with you.
Yeah. So at this point, my Twitter got suspended. So I don't know. I'll send you my other Twitter. I don't remember what it was. I'm using a lurker one, but if someone wants to reach me, it should be on the notes. It has to do something with Kenobi General 4 or 5 or something like that. I don't know. So that's Twitter. They can get a hold of me there. They can just send me a DM. Otherwise, I would send people to Demand Pool, where we're working the website. So soon enough, hopefully by the time people are listening to this, they will see the new website. But it's going to be baller. Right now, it's bare bones. It's decent, but we're going to have a baller website. And there should be a contact form there, and otherwise email. And in case they want to email me and they want to get a hold of me, I would say general.kenobi@dmnd, so demand but without the vowels, .work. Okay. If they want to send me an email, say, hi, how do I get into Stratum V2? How do I mine with you guys? I'll be happy to help them there.
Yeah, I'll make sure all of that's in the show notes in the description of the video, guys.
And also the Twitter of Demand Pool. Twitter Demand Pool. Search it up. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say you are a wealth of knowledge, Kenobi. I feel like I learn something new every single time we talk. So if you guys are curious, just reach out. He's always happy to have these conversations. Well, guys, this has been the Build a Mind podcast. Kenobi, I appreciate all the work that you're doing in the space. Thank you for coming on the pod and talking about it. We'll have to get you back on another time.
Thanks, Trevor. I'll see you around. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.